To start with, there are 2 points that you have to consider, 2 perspectives you have to consider to being a gaijin in Japan. The perspective that I will cover first is that of a person who looks particularly foreign, like myself, or black, Hispanic, Indian, whatever. And the second perspective that I'll talk about is being an Asian gaijin in Japan, because things wind up actually being very different. It doesn't matter what part of Asia you're from, Vietnam, Korea, China, whatever. It doesn't matter if you're Chinese American, whatever. It doesn't matter where you're from, what Asian descent you are. Even if you're like Japanese, Canadian or something. I don't know. There is a general effect that it has on the Japanese people's mind, and the general way that they all think about such people as a general. First perspective, being white, black, Hispanic, etc. in Japan. First off, you're the one that they easily consider a gaijin. You are a foreigner. You look foreign, you speak a foreign language, and they do not expect you to know Japanese most of the time. They will approach you with the little bit of English they know, unless they're, of course, your schoolmates where they know more English, and they will try to talk to you in that, if they try to talk to you at all. People at the stores, depending on where you are, will still try to talk to you in Japanese because they don't have to know English. They're not required to. Whereas those people in hotels will try to talk to you in English. People on the street, if you ask for directions, it doesn't matter if you ask in Japanese. They will try to respond in English most of the time, from my observations. Second point, and this is actually a bit of a change to my previous videos about packing. This is an update I have to say about them from my observations, my experiences in Japan. In those videos, I stated that you want to adapt to Japanese fashion. They cover their shoulders, so you have to as well. Close up. But from being here, from seeing other gaijin here at my university, I've observed that you don't have to follow their fashion. I mean, it's still nice, it's what they're used to, but they won't, no Japanese person will say anything to you about what you're wearing. If you're wearing a tank top, they won't comment. They might ask you if you're cold, but that's about it. They will still, like, you'll still get approached to be somebody's friend. Guys typically don't seem to think any less of you. I don't know, I haven't had a boyfriend here. And generally you're just accepted no matter how you dress, if you're going to a school. Because, hey, you're somebody foreign to talk to. You're cool, you're interesting. And you're somebody to help practice their English with. Really, it's as simple as that. So, while it's still recommended to go with it because it's their norms and you'll get questioned less, at the same time, you don't have to. I've seen plenty of people here walk around in spaghetti straps, or tube tops even, and Japanese don't seem to give them a second glance. They're kind of used to it at universities, typically. And if they're not, the most that'll happen is they whisper about it to their friends in Japanese, to where, unless you're a really high level, you're just not going to understand, because they don't care to mention it to you. They might mention it to their friend because they think it's strange, but they won't say anything to you. It's part of a Japanese cultural thing where, like, in order to keep the peace, they don't mention things unless it's absolutely necessary. They will avoid topics for as long as they can if it's not necessary. And also, I said people will try to talk to you in English. While they will try to talk to you in English most of the time, the more rural of an area you're in, the more they'll try to speak to you in Japanese because the less English they'll know. They're required to take it throughout middle school and high school, but most people after high school forget it, and most of those in middle school and high school don't get to practice it often, and so aren't good at speaking it. They'll probably understand what you say if you talk slow enough, but they won't be able to respond back in English, only Japanese. So that's something to remember if you're planning on going to a small town or something. In Hiragana, it depends on the people. I've had people approach me and start talking to me in Japanese when I wasn't expecting it. I've also had people, even though I talk to them in Japanese, respond to me in English. It can go either way here, I think. Same with Osaka, but in Tokyo, they always tried to speak to me in English no matter what I did. Except the one hotel I checked into, I walked in speaking Japanese. They said they were surprised I could speak Japanese in Japanese, and then continued to talk to me in Japanese the rest of the time. So I think it's a hit or miss for that. If you really want to practice your Japanese and that's why you're coming here, try to always start conversations in Japanese, and sometimes they'll respond in Japanese. I'd say probably 60% of the time, 60 to 70% of the time, they'll respond in Japanese. The other 30% of the time, they will respond in English. But just give it a try. I think that's the majority of the very foreign-looking perspective on being a gaijin in Japan. Next, using stories my Asian friends have told me, I'll talk about being an Asian gaijin in Japan. Now, what happens here is that a lot of the times, instead of people approaching you and trying to speak in English, they'll approach you in Japanese. They typically, for some reason, can't tell the difference. Usually, only people who specifically study another country can tell the difference between the typical, not always, but typical facial structures of, say, Japan, Korea, Japan, China. I actually had a conversation about this with a friend of mine the other day, where we were surprised that the Japanese can't tell by somebody's face whether they're from Japan or not, if they're Asian. And she compared it to, like, saying, but Chinese faces look so different to Japanese faces because of this. And I said, well, I'm not so sure about Chinese, but Korean faces look so different because of this. Oh, really? I always thought Korean faces looked so much like Japanese faces, she responded. And so it's kind of a bias as to what you know more about. Probably if a Japanese is really into Korean culture, really into Korean things, they'll be able to tell that if a person is Japanese or Korean. Not necessarily if they're Japanese or Chinese, but Japanese or Korean. I actually have a Japanese friend here who is very attracted to Korean boys. She's very biased towards them. I'm pretty sure she wants to date one. And she finds it entertaining when we're out and about in Osaka to just tug my arm. Ne, Katie, 韓国人ですね? And yeah, usually if we listen to their conversation, we then see, yeah, they are Korean. Good job. And it just becomes a fun little game for her, basically. And I'm just entertained to see her try. And I'm entertained by how entertained she is by Koreans. Once they're at your university for a few years, you kind of just get used to it. I don't know. I'll probably be entertained next year because I'll be in Korea. But for right now, it's just kind of, I'm studying abroad, they're studying abroad. Ah. Other points. So basically what I said about being a gaijin in Japan prior to only applies to those who look forward. If you don't look forward, you'll be thought of as Japanese. So if you don't dress Japanese, people are more likely to say something to you. They still won't necessarily, but they're more likely to. I've had friends stop when it was a Yugakse on campus only day because people were going to meet their host families. I was walking in with a Chinese Australian friend of mine to the university, and the guard at the gate stopped us and said, "Yugakse desu ka?" I was like, hi, Yugakse, and kept walking, and my friend did as well, figuring I was answering for the both of us. The guard then stopped my friend and said, "Anata wa Yugakse desu ka?" We were both very surprised. Like, he seriously thought that my Chinese Australian friend was Japanese. I've had other friends have similar experiences. They don't really know the difference. So that's basically all I have to say on that point. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, or send them to my Tumblr that I've linked to before in my channel. I can link it in the description. And I'll see you guys soon. Maybe. Bye.